Hello Internet, it's Daniel with Driving and Dragons, and today I've got a big gripe. Predominantly with the OSR, but as a general rule with independent game designers in the world today, and just a plea to please stop with the retro clones. Quit riding off of the coattails of the people who tried to take everything from you. See you guys on the other side. So let's start off with a disclaimer here. Retro clones as a whole are not a bad thing. I think they serve a very good purpose. They're an easy access way for players to play the older versions of games that predominantly Dungeons and Dragons that may be difficult to find books for, difficult to find resources for. They tend to have some simplified rule sets or some cleanup work that was not done in the original, so it's easier to learn, easier to pick up. Things are more centralized into a single game as opposed to having to chase through all the different additions and add-ons and supplements that led to what was the complete version of the game. So there's definitely a place for them, and there's definitely a place for playing those old versions. And to be perfectly honest, I would much rather see somebody grab a retro clone than pay Wizards of the Coast at this point. But that said, the issue that I take is you've got a bunch of people, and I'm just going to go out and say this. Some of them are well-meaning. I think most of them are probably well-meaning. But you've got a lot of people who are going out there who are jumping on, riding the wave of anti-Wizards of the Coast stuff. This happened with 4th edition. That's where a lot of your retro clones kind of started, was coming out in the during 4th edition. Players were ticked at it. So people saw, hey, I can make a game to go against Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't want to put in the effort. I don't want to put in the play testing. This is a lot of work. This takes a lot of time. There's actually a sacrifice involved. There's some creativity and some learning and some education that's required. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Dungeons and Dragons edition that everybody already likes, and I'm going to make a couple of adjustments to it, and I'm going to call it a brand new game, and that's going to be my thing. And really, I mean, you think about it, that's what Paizo did with Pathfinder. Paizo is nothing but a 3.5 clone with some extra polish on it. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. There were people who wanted that centralized, polished version. But what we've got here is we live in an age where it's easier than ever to get word out. It is cheaper than ever to publish something because you can publish it as a PDF. It's these Facebook groups and Reddit threads and on Twitter and Discord servers and stuff, it is easier than ever to grab a handful of players to play test or to get some people to talk about your game a little bit. And we've got a lot of quote-unquote game designers, indie developers out here who aren't developing anything. They're just taking the old version of Dungeons & Dragons, throwing in a couple of their homebrew rules and changes, and then turning around and saying, this is my system, buy here. By the way, it's compatible with 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, whatever the case may be. And they perpetuate the focus on the D20 and Dungeons & Dragons system. And they take away from all the great things that could be out there. So it's not necessarily saying that, making a D20 system game is necessarily terrible. But with the clone aspect, where you're deliberately trying to say, this is Dungeons and Dragons, but not Dungeons and Dragons, I think has become extremely counterproductive. There's enough of them out there. There's enough good ones out there that just people can pick up. And focus needs to be more on these other newer ideas and newer things coming out. So if you're an indie developer and your idea is, I'm just going to basically tweak 5th edition and call it my game, don't. Come up with something more original. Be more effective at these things. And players, start calling this stuff for what it is. Stop going to you're not really doing anything to send any kind of message to Wizards of the Coast if you're picking up a retro clone and then just playing the 5th edition adventures. Now, you're still buying stuff from Wizards, and even if you're not, you're telling them we're still going to play your game, and eventually when these publishers can't keep up with our demand, we're going to have to come back to you anyway, because we're too lazy to go out and teach our players a new system or guide our players into a new system. We're too lazy as players to try something a little bit new with our role-playing. And that is my primary gripe with a lot of your retro clones and a lot of your quote-unquote indie games, is for every relatively unique indie game that comes out, there's 2 or 3 Dungeons and Dragons, but not Dungeons and Dragons games that's come out. Make something new. Even going so far as to call in the Critical Role game, which I'm not a Critical Role fan. I think it's a very bad example of role-playing, and it sets an expectation for a TTRPG that's both not fun and not realistic. And I think their system is designed more to support their table reading exercise that they put online than it is actual gameplay. But at least they made their own system. At least it's not just Dungeons and Dragons with a different skin on it and a different name. So don't do that. Don't focus on retro clones. Don't focus on designers who are simply reskinning Dungeons and Dragons as Lairs and Lizards. Focus on new horizons. Try a couple of things. And the best thing you can do as a player is look at the things that you like most and find the systems that focus on it. So, for example, if you're a Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 player, and the thing you love the most is the skill system. You like the way the skills work. You wish it was more on skills, less on feats, less on class abilities and that sort of thing. Find a game system that focuses heavily on skills. If you like the superpower, superhero nature of, say, 5th edition, go find a game that takes out a lot of the minutia and focuses on powers and play a superhero game or something of that nature. Try that out. But please stop with the clones. Let's find some new, fun, and exciting things to go out and play with, and leave the clones to your BX and your OSRICs and that sort of thing, where they've renewed things. It's been done. Leave it to the people who've already done it. That's all I've got. See you guys next time. Like, share, subscribe, hit the button. All the fun stuff you got to do for YouTube helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time.